If you do not want to make the same mistakes every beginner makes on their first knife, come with me and I will help you. This is a series where I will show you, from start to finish, how to build a knife the right way. And today we are going to finish the blade grinding after heat treatment. Before we start, an important point. I will cover heat treatment in a separate video, because each type of steel has a different process, with specific temperatures and steps. So instead of keeping it superficial, I prefer to go deeper into it later. Now, with the blade already treated, the first step is to align the Ricasso. I do this with a 220 grit sandpaper, removing the minimum amount of material, always checking to make sure it stays completely flat. With that done, I mark the center of the blade again. I apply layout dye on the spine and on the edge. Rest the Ricasso on a flat surface. And mark both sides until I find the exact center. Now I move to the belt grinder. Here I start with a coarser grit, 36, to create the distal taper, which is the thinning of the blade toward the tip. And here is a critical point. The blade cannot overheat. Any temperature above approximately 180 degrees can already compromise the heat treatment. So I work slowly. Always removing material evenly from the edge to the spine, and always cooling the blade. I do most of this grinding on the front 2/3 of the blade. The area close to the Ricasso I leave to adjust later with finer grits. Over time, the blade gets thinner toward the tip, keeping more material near the Ricasso and becoming thinner at the tip. There is no secret here. It is practice. The more time you spend in the shop, the more control you gain. But even as a beginner, it is possible. It will just require more patience. Now I repeat the same process on the other side, always comparing to keep both sides symmetrical. An important tip: I never remove all the material from one side before moving to the other. I keep alternating, always leaving a little material for fine adjustment at the end. This helps a lot with symmetry. With the rough grinding done, I move to more delicate work, using a 100 grit. Now I start bringing the grind closer to the Ricasso area. But here is a critical detail. I adjust the grinder so the belt does not touch the Ricasso. This way I can work very close without damaging what was already done. I approach slowly with a lot of attention, because any mistake here can compromise the entire blade. I repeat the same process on the other side. Now we move into one of the most important parts of the knife, the edge geometry. The edge geometry defines how the knife behaves. It determines if the knife is more aggressive, more resistant, or more suitable for a specific type of use. In this case, since it is a small hunting knife, I can use a more aggressive and thinner geometry because it will be used for cutting, not impact. I mark approximately 1 centimeter from the edge. This is the area where the geometry transition will happen. Above this, the blade remains flat. Now I remove the flat platen from the grinder and start working with a slack belt to create this convex shape on the edge. I start slowly, alternating sides. Always moving from the edge toward the marking. For control, I keep my finger holding the Ricasso at all times. To avoid any accidental contact with the belt. I also use the upper part of the grinder, where the belt is more flexible, to soften this transition. Gradually, the geometry starts to appear. The edge is not flat, it becomes slightly convex, which directly affects the knife performance. Now I begin the refinement. I used 100 grit for the initial grinding, and now I move to 220 grit to adjust and reach the final geometry. At this point, the knife is almost pre-sharpened. Now I do the final finish on the grinder, also with 220 grit, removing the scratches from the previous steps, always being careful not to overheat and not to touch the Ricasso. And this is the result of the final blade grinding. From here, we move only to manual finishing. Now I do a basic edge retention test. I give it a light sharpening on a 1000 grit stone, drop it on leather, and start by testing on paper. Then I do a light test on wood. It is not the ideal use for this knife, but it works as a safety margin test. During the test, I distribute the effort along the edge. And then check again on paper. If the knife keeps cutting, the edge retention is good. And here, everything is working as expected. If this helped you, leave a comment with your thoughts. Let me know if you have any questions or if you think anything was missing, and don't forget to like and share. And in the next one, I will show you how to do the manual finishing of the blade.